So I figure it's about time that I do another video log, if nothing else, for my own tracking later. Though I don't know if I'll watch all these videos. I was writing this morning about consistency and the need to keep going. And it relates a lot to Aphantasia and SDAM, and also, as I'm learning, is executive function, executive dysfunction, ADHD symptoms. And I have some things written down. I might just read through some of these. The first point I have is that impulsivity thwarts focus, and good habits and repetition is really what leads to progress. Strengthening neural pathways. If you're exercising, if you're building muscle, or if you're trying to, you have a goal of running a marathon or half marathon, you have to repetitively exercise and rest and grow. And it takes time. It can take years. As we think about building a mind's eye or strengthening our mental imagery, it could take years to do that, especially depending on how much time you put towards it. But consistency is necessary. And there's this thing in the book, Atomic Habits, on pages 21 through 23, called the Plateau of Latent Potential. And in a nutshell, it's that a lot of our efforts, they bear no fruit at first. And for that reason, it's easy to give up and walk away and try something else because the thing that we're doing isn't working. Sometimes that's necessary, right? We don't want to be stuck turning our wheels and not getting anywhere. But oftentimes the right plan, a brilliant idea, it just never comes to fruition because we don't stick with the plan. And that has been the case for me in various areas of my life. Impulsivity and impatience, coupled with a lack of vision, I wrote down, has been my undoing for years. And, that's the one thing about aphantasia. A lot of people who have it, they say they wouldn't want to be able to see anything in their mind's eye or have a mind's eye in their head. But it's such a powerful tool, and one of the things that it helps with is with motivation. I've seen posts of people say, every night before bed I would play a movie in my head of me, doing the thing. Various people, famous swimmers, there's songs about it, if you can see it, then you can do it, sort of thing. And when you don't have that mind's eye to see yourself doing something that you love, say you have a goal of becoming a comic artist, or of, running a marathon and finishing it, or studying a field and graduating and working in that field, if it requires schooling, or, passing a test. If you can see yourself do that thing, your mind, in a way, doesn't know that it's not real, and so in your body it responds and it gets you motivated. Dopamine, which I've been learning a lot about recently as a neurotransmitter, it is created, it is released due to just visualizing a thing. And with me not having that ability, it's easy to forget, coupled with SDAM, severely deficient autobiographical memory or episodic memory. It's easy to forget one's goals, one's decisions, and then switch to something else. Moving over and over since my childhood, there's just patterns of like starting over, not sticking with a thing. But this impulsivity and impatience, talking again about dopamine, which I consider a good friend of mine, put me on the trail in regard to possible ADHD in myself. And dopamine, being driven by dopamine, which I want to make a clear distinction, which really, in a really nice way, the book Atomic Habits also brings up, and I read it in other books such as Your Brain on Porn. Dopamine is heavily involved in the reward, desire reward like cycle, but it's not the pleasure molecule. It's more that it's the desire molecule, and it's not just that, but heavily involved in making us and motivating and giving us craving and like wanting to pursue things like endogenic opioids, things that actually make us feel good, oxytocin. It can drive us towards pleasure. If you have low dopamine, then in certain parts of your brain, then you may not have the desire to go do anything. May lead to depression. And so oftentimes when people like overload their dopamine system by engaging in addictive behaviors, then like normal everyday activities, they don't have the motivation to do that. So, as a kid, I did find that like I was often shirking my responsibilities like homework to pursue what was fun and immediate, and I think that's probably common in kids, but it was more of an ongoing theme for me. Practice is boring at times because it's repetitive, it loses its novelty, and lack of change, immediate change, if it's because it's practice. Again, going back to that plateau of latent potential, it can become discouraging when you don't see the results and you can't visualize that, if I keep doing this thing, then I'll be able to enjoy this larger thing that is worth the other sacrifices of, saying no to X, Y, or Z thing. Just real quick, dopamine is not just what motivates us towards something. It also is a molecule that is involved in aversion. Like, so, turning away from things and being like, that was painful. It's very heavily involved in memory, like helping us to remember what was pleasurable, what was painful. And so it's highly involved in learning and in memories, and also in other parts of the brain. It's involved in physical movement, voluntary movement of the body, and so people with Parkinson's, certain parts of the brain, it's not producing dopamine, and so they lose control over their physical body. And so it's a very interesting neurotransmitter. I've been learning a lot about these cholecatamines, these types of neurotransmitters, again, thanks to my friend who turned me on to my own possible ADHD symptoms. But yeah, as a kid, I was interested in breakdancing, learning languages like Japanese. As an adult, I've wanted to become more flexible. I'm an aspiring mangaka, graphic novelist, pursuing arts, and wanting to experience like beautiful long-term romantic relationships. And in many ways, in all these things, impulsivity and impatience and being driven by too much dopamine is my current theory, has been part of the problem, and not, sticking through with my plan in these areas. But it is something that is a consolation to me, because for the question I have written or the idea I have written down is perhaps it's not simply a moral and behavioral problem, but a physical and neurological one. So already mentioned aphantasia and SDAM in regard to forgetting and losing sight of one's goals. But last year I did some genetic testing for the first time. I'm sure I have it perhaps written down somewhere. I'm not sure why I decided to do that, but I'm glad I did, because I took that information. I did 23andMe, and I took that information and I found out about a website called Genetic Life Hacks, and I plugged my information there and found out a whole bunch of things. It's a really cool website, but I have I think almost all the markers for this thing called low COMT. COMT stands for catechol O-methyltransferase, and it's basically a type of enzyme, is how I've heard it described. It can help clear out and break down catecholamines, such as dopamine. So when it's low, what's happening is those neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine, which is like it's like a precursor to adrenaline, epinephrine, they can stack up in the brain. It's like a slow draining sink where the water's running, but it's not just going out, it's just like stacking up. And so the brain can become, and these are like layman working model terms, but it can become flooded with dopamine. And that's my current theory about myself, because in many ways I decided to go down that pathway and took a questionnaire from a therapist and went to see a psychiatrist, and I got prescribed some medications for ADHD. So the psychiatrist seemed to think, and the questionnaire seemed to highly point towards ADHD type symptoms in me, and that was like a big thing to swallow. Even just like taking the questionnaire, I was kind of like, wow, I was seeing patterns that have been with me like my whole life. And it was like, okay. Hard to swallow, especially when you're like, I'm already still coming to terms with the whole aphantasia, and SDAM thing. But just like the memory issues, it's like, it's not just that I have a bad memory and that's all. It's like understanding the mechanisms and like the potential whys behind it it's like, okay, I can work with this. It's hard to hear it. It's hard to accept it, but I can work with it. So the same thing with ADHD and connecting it with when I tried those medications, just switching back real quick, when I tried those medications, it actually it helped to some degree, like really well for this one task in which I had to focus for like 4 hours and like really hone in on something work related. But overall, it had me feeling really speedy and wired, and like I was like, I took the first like 5 ants for 2 days, and I'm like, I'm not doing this. It was a low dose. It was like 20 milligrams first day and then 10 milligrams the second day. So then I tried a couple weeks later Strattera, generic versions of these drugs, and same thing, no stimulant, but reuptake inhibitor for norepinephrine. And for someone who probably, and I didn't think about this during that time, but for someone who probably has too much floating around in his system, in his brain, like it still had the effect. It's supposed to be something that you build up to, this reuptake inhibitor. But I have become more aware of myself. My interoception has been a practice, but I felt very racy and speedy. Like my mind wanted to go like at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and I, couldn't settle. And so, sorry, I hear my kids are getting up, so distracted me for a second. Yeah, some symptoms that I've, throughout my life have worked on and become more mature about and like tried to improve upon. But still, it remained. I look back and see, like, even especially last year in 2025, I'm like being overreactive about things emotionally, being very impulsive, impatient. It's kind of like a bee going from flower to flower and not being able to, put in roots. And that's been something that I've realized like I need to do, is like to have stability in my life. Moving all around as a kid, leaving a huge, culty religion in 2020, leaving, getting divorced, moving from state to state, getting in relationships and exploring, and, dealing with struggles and drama related to that, in relation to those things. One of the big things that I'm actually very interested in pursuing, and I am pursuing, is this idea, and I have it, I'll bring it up here. It's this idea, there was some research showing that in people with aphantasia, that they actually have areas of their brain that are overactive. And that might be interfering with other imagery signals. So, and actually it's on I have this posted on my website, so I'm just actually going to go there and check it out for my notes, because I don't have it perfectly or nearly perfectly memorized. But here we go. So there's this research article that was done, I think it was in 2024. Yeah, September 26, 2024. Some of the scientists involved are Merlin Monzel, Cornelia McCormick, who I have seen their names several times in different articles. It says one potential mechanism of aphantasia-related autobiographical memory deficits is that the heightened activity of the visual perceptual cortices observed in our and previous work, hinders aphantasics to detect weaker imagery-related signals. Interestingly, lower resting activity and excitability result in stronger imagery, and reducing cortical activity in the visual cortex via transcranial direct current stimulation increases visual imagery strength. And so there are different cortices involved here than like the prefrontal cortex. It talks about the visual cortex. But there's, when I was a baby, when I was 3, like I had a febrile seizure, and then I was put on phenobarbital for a whole year for that one seizure, which I think it had its own effects. But, why did I have that seizure? Perhaps because my brain was overflooded or overactive in general, and the fever just pushed it into that, that epileptic seizure zone. So what I'm trying to do now is to, instead of taking stimulants, instead of trying to increase norepinephrine and dopamine, I'm actually trying to decrease it. Because I noticed with things, even like recently with coffee, like it throws me, like my body is like shivering, and I never noticed it before, but it has me feeling like speedy and shivering. And I don't know if I'm getting more sensitive as I get older, but yeah, I definitely, my brain has been changing. I've been taking like Bacopa Monnieri for like, I don't know, 8 months or so now, 7 or 8 months. But still, the idea is if I can lower the amount of dopamine, then perhaps I won't be so impulsive. Because with ADHD, and I have these notes again on my website, it says excess dopamine can make tasks feel impossible to start, While it sounds contradictory, chronically high spikes or overloaded dopamine pathways collapse your day-to-day motivation through a process called receptor downregulation and the creation of a dopamine gap. Excess dopamine doesn't mean zero motivation across the board. Instead, it often causes your focus to get locked onto the wrong thing. As a result, you might find yourself intensely driven to research a random rabbit hole for 4 hours, but completely unable to look at your actual work responsibilities. The excess chemical signal overrides your prefrontal cortex's ability to prioritize what is actually important over what is immediately stimulating, which has been my experience. And so I don't think I actually need more dopamine. I think I have too much. My hope is that if I can resolve that I will be able to focus and keep practicing and doing the things that will help me develop mental imagery, whether it's fasting, aerobic exercise, and these are related to neurogenesis and brain-derived neurotropic factor. I hope I'm saying that right. Neurotropic factor. But yeah, just sticking with the plan and not getting distracted with I want to do art. I need to focus on mental imagery. I do this. Let me set a schedule and then stick to it for a few days and then don't do it. And let me buy this program, this stretching program to open up my hips and do it for a few days and then, whether it's life stresses or something new, a new book, it doesn't help the environment that we are in. It doesn't help. Social media, digital onslaught, just the advertisement that everyone's trying to get our attention and keep it. And so that's an issue. And then I work from home. I work remotely. I can just be completely isolated all day. And so for someone who is an extrovert, even if you're not an extrovert, it's like solitary confinement. It can be that way. And so there's enough, I feel like, challenges in regard to sticking with a plan and growing and developing. And yes, we have control over our environment to some degree, and that's something I'm working with. But the fact that maybe, and I'll just run through some of the things I'm doing. It's only been about a week, but maybe if I can resolve, with this aphantasia and memory, understanding what might be causing it and working on it the same way in regard to attention and consistency, then my life will could be much healthier and better, and I can make progress. Because that's what really started me going down this line seriously of ADHD type symptoms, is being depressed over the fact that why am I not accomplishing the things that I want? There's so many things that I have ideas and have wanted to do, and I just have not stuck with it. And that's what really got me into taking those questionnaires. But if I can do that, then it'll be better for myself, better for my kids, better for any potential partners or friendships, and at work and all these other things. So it's really important. And so some of the things that I'm doing right now, I'm testing is, I mentioned number one, I'm not taking those ADHD stimulants and reuptake inhibitors. I am actually removing stimulants from my life. So ones that I've been taking for some time. So coffee and tea. I was probably drinking 2 to 4 espresso, cappuccino, oat milk cappuccino, usually per week. And then having black tea, probably a couple cups each day on average. And of course, there are things like getting enough sleep that help with brain health in this regard, as far as not feeling overstimulated. But removing caffeine. I'm also going to be using L-theanine Right now it's 3 times a day at 200 milligrams. Those L-theanine, besides having a calming effect, can potentially affect other neurotransmitters like glutamate and GABA. I'm not sure if that's how it's pronounced, and those neurotransmitters are involved in like neuron firing and like go faster or go slower. So it's more of like enabling regulation and hopefully adding more brakes, like go slower, don't just be compelled, or the impulsivity, like let's bring it down a little bit. So that's L-theanine. Magnesium, which is a precursor, or it's one of the things that is needed for building COMT, that catechol O-methyltransferase enzyme. So magnesium, and then I'm also trying there's a few other ones, but I'll just name the more important ones. Want to boost serotonin. I have other reasons for that, which I won't go into in this video, but serotonin through 5-HTP as a precursor to serotonin. I guess the main thing is just getting that up, try to get serotonin up to sort of combat, if you will, or balance out the fact that dopamine is probably overly stored or running through the brain for me. And then the last one is this supplement called Uridine, Uridine, and it's been shown to perhaps have some, in laboratory, unfortunately, but in rats, to perhaps change the receptors and the dopaminergic activity, so like how dopamine works with receptors. And the idea is hopefully that these dopamine spikes won't be so powerful that they will be dulled a bit. It's also like really important for other type of brain, like neuron development, I think, kind of like Bacopa monnieri. It helps with synapse growth. So at any rate, so I'm trying this. It's been about a week. I have already had some really interesting results, but Uridine is a long-term like build-up type thing where you have to have taken it first. I think, in the test they did, it was like months. So chronic use of it was where it was shown to be effective. Otherwise, I think at first it kind of mimics some of these stimulants and reuptake inhibitors where the dopamine might actually raise a little bit. But yeah, I have noticed some interesting things. Like the other day, I noticed I was feeling very euphoric, and I think just because I'm not as stimulated by like coffee and tea, that's probably like I'm feeling better in that regard. I'm less on edge, less wired, even though it's not like I was drinking like 10 cups a day. Sleep has been a thing where, I'm getting maybe between 5 to 6 hours of sleep, and then I have to like take a nap midday. I think that will level out with time. Also, just it's warm, it's summertime. So during the summer, when it's not chilly, then I don't know, biphasic sleeping becomes more of a thing. Though for whatever reason, I think due to the like change in like brain chemistry and like things settling and like reaching a homeostasis, like I'm not able to fall asleep even after an hour or so of just laying there in bed. But fortunately, I can like take a nap in the middle of the day and like be fine. But my goal is to try it at least for like 6 to 8 weeks and then sort of reassess. But as I was talking about before, progress takes time, and kind of like with the whole Bacopa monnieri thing, it's like the first time I tried it last year, I didn't take it long enough because I didn't know you had to take it for like 6 to 8 weeks before you start feeling the effects. And this year I tried it again, and it was like, whoa, like brain fogs like went way down, and memory is like much more accessible. And so with these things too, I know that it's a slow transition. Like the body has to like relearn, and like the neurons are relearning how to like work with their receptors and how much to put out, and so we'll see what happens. But it would be it would be a miracle though too if lowering the brain activity, or it's not so charged, results in me being able to pick up on like visual images, like mental imagery, more easily. That would be awesome, even if it's not straight on full visuals, even if it's like during just more access to memory, and during liminal states having more hypnagogic or hypnopompic visions would be really fun and cool. So anyways, that's all for now. That's my update, and until next time, I'll report back definitely in a month or two and let you know if anything cool or not happens. All right.